Hi everyone, this is Lorraine Driscoll from Building Better Brains. Happy Monday morning. What I want to talk to you about this morning is a topic that comes up all the time whenever I'm working with parents regarding their children and how to improve their learning and behavior. And that starts with food. So before we do learning therapies, reading therapy, anything else that can make changes in the brain, I firstly address to make sure that the brain is getting what it needs and so forth, because that can often be one of the major underlying factors that are influencing a child's ability to learn and behave and be happy. So the common thing that I see in my office is kids come in and parents come in and the parents complain, well, he only eats a certain amount of foods. He won't eat anything else but fishy crackers and grilled cheese sandwiches and pizza. And it often tends to be carby, cheesy based foods, particularly white carb based foods. Some kids won't eat any vegetables, any fruit, or a very, very limited amount. And what I see happening is we have a cultural trend where food has become such a part of parenting. Of course, it's always been a part of parenting to feed your child, but using food to reward and bond and connect has become such a huge part of parenting today. And whereas in the past it was for nourishment and unfortunately wasn't always used the best in terms of, we've all heard stories of the kid who was sent, their grandma and grandpa was sent to the room with no food because they weren't listening or misbehaving, or they were forced to sit at the table and eat everything on their plate every single night, and they struggle with obesity and being overweight and so forth. And so we are terrified. We don't want to be those parents. We've definitely moved from a society where we want to have more of a relationship with our child. And sometimes we definitely struggle with that, where that line is in terms of being the parent versus being the friend. And unfortunately, we have moved away from eat everything on your plate, which is definitely not the best approach. But unfortunately, we moved into the whole other end of the spectrum, which can have, I find, almost the same situation, create the same situation to eat whatever you want or don't eat anything on your plate and eat, sweet, kind of whatever snacks you want in between. And childhood obesity has skyrocketed. It's an epidemic. Learning and behavioral problems are a huge issue. And as we know, food greatly affects many of these behaviors and so forth. And I've always found that diet is the first and most immediate shift to make whenever kids are struggling cognitively. And I think we need to just realize that setting healthy boundaries around food is just as much a part of parenting with love as telling your child to put a winter hat on or put a winter coat on, or they're not going outside until they drink more water. And yes, they do have to go to bed at a reasonable time at 7:30. Bonding through food is actually perhaps not the best way to connect and bond with our child, even though it is really fun. I'm not saying to never do it. I go into more detail in my article, as well as I will next week as well. But finding other ways to bond and connect is probably a better approach. So I'm going to just tell you about my top 4 out of 8 tips for today on what you can do to curb picky eating. So the first one is to start with what your child knows. If they love vegetables, then by all means, feed them vegetables. Find out what vegetables they like to eat and start with those. Don't introduce like Brussels sprouts if they absolutely hate Brussels sprouts. As their nutrition improves, they will naturally want to eat more healthy food, but it's going to be a slow process. So start with what they know, cook it the way they like it. So some kids hate raw broccoli, but they'll eat cooked broccoli, and then sneak in slowly the other types of foods that they maybe aren't so crazy about, but that, maybe as they develop an acquired taste, it'll slowly grow. The second one is to eat as a family. This has been found to be extremely effective as well. So the more you connect and eat as a family and, to have great conversations and turn off that TV, that shifts that eating is much more than just food. I think what creates a really healthy bond with eating because it creates a healthy bond with the act of eating as opposed to bonding through a big bowl of, ice cream topped with chocolate chips. And while it's really delicious and not horrible, it just creates a different atmosphere. So just to make dinner times a really special time of the day when everybody can come home from their busy days and connect and so forth. Regular meals and snacks. So definitely eating all the time, all day long, grazing, eating a little bit of supper or a little bit of lunch, and then eating these snacks that are probably not the healthiest snacks is definitely not the best approach, especially if it's just all over the place. So the first step that I tell parents to start is to have kind of scheduled meals and snack times. We did that with my own daughter when I had slipped into some bad habits. And within a few weeks, it worked quite well, because then it was like, well, it's not quite 10 o'clock yet. And it might seem kind of rigid, but sometimes these kids actually really benefit from that, to set those boundaries, because we will create an obesity epidemic. Just as much as telling your kid you have to eat everything on their plate, we're going to create an obesity epidemic if we allow them to eat all the time, whatever they want. We're never teaching them to make healthy choices, to not give in to those cravings. And we're detaching them from any internal cues of the difference between hunger and fullness versus cravings and so forth. So also, the other thing is, if your child claims they're absolutely starving and you have some serious mom guilt going on, definitely address why you perhaps have mom guilt going on. How we're nourishing our children has to do with our own issues with food. So you might want to address your own issues with food, which I have an excellent program for. If you want to learn more, message me. But offer them a healthy alternative, right? So if they like, can I have some pudding, or can I have this, something they would normally have gravitated towards in the past, say, well, if you're hungry, you can have an apple, or you can have some trail mix. Offer them a healthy alternative. And if they don't want that, chances are they're not actually hungry, right? Because when you're hungry, you'll eat food. When you're craving, you have something very specific that you want. You have it in your head. That's what you want. And that's something that, you have to work with and so forth. And obviously a healthier appetite, better appetite, going to the table even a little bit hungry is not a bad thing. That's where they're going to actually eat and try and experiment different types of food. Number 4 is respect the chef. So the first thing I suggest is trying to get your child to cook with you. And I would almost want to lean towards saying, make them cook with you. They don't have to cook every single meal, but maybe so many meals a week, they have to help do something. It could be something as simple as setting the table, helping to wash veggies, putting some of the veggies in the pan, whatever the case may be, and whatever is age appropriate. But the more that they cook, the more they're going to have respect for the chef and the process and the time and the energy that someone puts into cooking a meal. And the less likely they're going to be sitting there at the table going, I don't want to eat, and all that type of stuff. And even if they're not involved with the process and they're doing that, I've heard a lot of other friends who are nutritionists say that the approach they take with their child is they say, we don't listen to complaints about food at the table. If you're not going to eat something, you have to try 3 bites. After that, if you don't want to eat it, just leave it. But to just be allowed to complain allows them to kind of get into that cycle of negativity around new foods, and just teach them it's hurtful and disrespectful to the person who prepped to be complaining and saying that the food is disgusting and not tasty and so forth. So that's it for my 4 top suggestions on how to curb picky eating. Next week, I'll talk about the other 4. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I really look forward to hearing what struggles are you having with picky eating, and what and how are you addressing it? Is there any tips that you have, or ways that you know of how to resolve some of these, especially if you have a picky eater and now you're trying to get out of it? Because it's very easy to set those, to get to, if you're, wise enough from the minute you start parenting and realize we're not going down that road, you're going to eat this and we're going to expose them to really good food. But if you're already in that situation, it can be tricky to get yourself out. So what are your top tips to do that? So I look forward to hearing from you. And, if you want to learn more about my different programs, please hop over my website, www.lorrainedriscoll.com. I'll put the link in the video, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye, take care, and have a great week.